May the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our redeemer. Amen. Have you launched out into the deep? Or are you still waiting in the shallows? When Jesus gets into your boat, it is for keeps. Your eyes focus straight ahead, never looking back, leaving behind everything you once knew, forsaking the comfortable and familiar for a life of surprises and high adventure. The only cost is obedience. No matter what, even if you want to do differently, have questions, or think you know better, if that is more than you have bargained for, don't allow Jesus on board. When we find Simon Peter in today's Holy Gospel, it sure looks like his call to become a disciple. But it is not. John tells us in his Gospel that had happened earlier, when Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, introduces him to the Messiah. It is then that Jesus says to Simon that he will be called Peter. But like what happens so often, Simon Peter hesitates. Though Jesus calls him to be a disciple, that is not what we find Simon Peter doing this morning. Instead, he has returned to his old life, the one he knows, and has settled back into being a fisherman again. But Jesus is not done with him yet, so he keeps calling him. Jesus gets on board Peter's boat. He tells him to launch out into the deep and to show that a life with Jesus is more exciting than a life of routine fishing. Jesus tells Peter to let down your nets. Now, Peter hesitates. But you don't understand, Jesus, he thinks. It is no use. It's just a waste of time. And like he does so often, Peter opens that big mouth of his. Master, we have been at it all night, and we have nothing to show for it. Peter thinks he knows better. But who knows why? Maybe Jesus gave him a stern look in the middle of his sentence. Or maybe Jesus' eyes were bright and hopeful. But for whatever reason, Peter relents. Okay, Jesus, whatever you say. What have we got to lose? And much to his amazement, Peter pulls up a great catch. So great, in fact, his nets are filled to bursting. He even has to call for backup. And when both boats are sinking from the sheer weight of all of those fresh, wriggling fish, Peter drops to his knees before Jesus. Leave me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord. It's like Isaiah in chapter 6. When Isaiah realizes he's in God's presence. Woe is me, he says, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I live in the midst of a people of unclean lips. And my eyes have seen the King, the Lord Almighty. But surprisingly, Jesus, he doesn't spend any time on us. He doesn't smirk and say, I told you so. He doesn't lecture Peter about how he should have behaved. No, Jesus is more interested in moving forward. He cares more about the future, what lies ahead. He says, don't be afraid. From now on, you are going to catch men. Like Peter, you and I have been called. Called to leave behind everything. A life of doing what we want, when we want, how we want. A life of living for ourselves, thinking we know better. A life of crossed arms and indifferent hearts. And to instead be a disciple, a follower, one who obeys Jesus no matter what. But time and time again, we go back. We don't like surprises. We like predictability. We don't like adventure. We prefer things to be tame. We don't like to take orders, no. We like to call our own shots. But the thing about not following Jesus is that you don't go anywhere that way. You go nowhere, worse than nowhere. It's like Simon Peter, if he didn't obey Jesus and let down his net. At first he wanted to do things his way. After all, who would know better than him how to fish? He was just doing it all night. But you and I can guess what would have happened. Not only would Simon Peter have gone home empty-handed, worse than that, he would have missed out on the greatest catch of his life. Imagine what Jesus has in store for you if you only do what he says. So what's holding you back? Whatever it is, for God's sake, let down your nets. Quit holding on for dear life and start clinging to Jesus, who is your only chance at a real life. Now, this realization, it can be a lot. Seeing how you have lost sight, perhaps, of God's call for you, settled for so much less, and even worked against him. Maybe like Peter, you want to drop to your knees and cry out, "Depart from me, for I am a sinner, O Lord." That is good. Do it. For the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. But then get right back up. Don't dwell on the past. Just like with Peter, Jesus doesn't. He's more interested in what lies ahead for you. After all, as far as what came before this, it's already forgiven. Your slate is wiped clean because Jesus was wiped out on the cross. You get a fresh start because Jesus met his end for you. And you have a bright future because he gloriously rose from the dead. The Son of Righteousness has risen with healing in his wings. If you are going to answer Jesus' call, it is full speed ahead. No time to look back. No, don't let your regrets stand in the way anymore. Launching out into the deep with Jesus means trading an old vocation for a new one. For Peter, it was trading fishing for catching men. For you, it might be trading living for yourself for living for others. Or trading social media for actually socializing in person. Or trading whispering the truth in secret to finally saying it out loud. Whatever it is, Jesus will use your new vocation for something big. Remember Peter? He caught a great catch. When you live a life of discipleship, so will you in so many ways. Like Peter needed a second boat to hold it all, you'll need one too when you follow Jesus. When you live obediently, your heart, your joy, and your life will be so full. Just like those boats of Peter's with all of those fish. Just imagine. One day, when you yourself will be caught up to heaven, as you set sail for eternity, you will meet so many people who used to be in the same boat as you. People you once knew will come up to you, friends, family, acquaintances, people you met in this life. And they will say, "You helped save my life. How can I ever thank you? I was lost, I was sinking, I was floundering, my life was a shipwreck. But then like a lifesaver, you came along. It was your example, the words that you said to me, that thing you did for me long ago. Through you, I heard Jesus call me. And I became a disciple too. It's because of you that I'm here today." Dear friends, right now, Jesus says to you, do not be afraid. From now on, you will catch men. Amen.